Hello, I'm Beryl Itani, and this is Where You Live. And this afternoon, we are going to be talking to Amber Gilbert and Don Wilkinson about the Civic Awards that are coming up very soon. And a lot of work has already gone into the planning and getting ready for this. So Amber, what is your role in the Civic Awards as far as the City of Kelowna is concerned?
Well, I'm the city staff person that oversees the Civic and Community Awards for the City of Kelowna. It's our 43rd annual this year, recognizing for 2017 contributions and achievements. So we've just wrapped up our nomination period and getting ready for the hard selection process. And then we make our announcement at City Council and get ready for the big event.
Okay, and it's not just very simply just getting people nominated and then you go through this process. There's a lot of people involved in all this, isn't it?
Oh yeah, we have our steering committee that oversees the whole process as well. It's actually a committee of council. So with our councillor, a council rep is Councillor Maxine DeHart, as well as other members of the community that kind of participate on our steering committee that help to oversee kind of the policy and procedures of the nomination period, as well as the selection and then moving into planning of the awards night and recognizing the deserving citizens and businesses in our city.
Yeah, that's great. And speaking of nominations, Don Wilkinson from Kelowna Community Resources, welcome. You are the chair of the nominating committee. So do you personally just go out and gather names for people, or?
Not personally in that sense, but we do have a committee.
Okay.
And actually, I was thinking about it, I've been on the nomination committee for 9 years now. When you were chairing it way back when.
Oh dear.
And I've been chairing it now the last couple of years. So we have a committee to represent the community so that we can look for nominations and approach organizations, businesses, individuals, but it's a group of us because we're trying to reach out as widely as we can, and as one person, of course, I wouldn't have the reach or the breadth of contacts that the whole committee does. So it's really cool to be able to work with a group of people who then identify areas where, oh, I know this, I know that, and then we make sure that nominations get in before the deadline.
Before the deadline, that's right, which has already passed.
Yes.
And so you've already got nominations in all the categories. There's a lot of categories.
Yes.
That
minimum of 3 in all of them?
Minimum of 3 in, and then after you have got all these nominations in, you kind of look at them and make sure that all the information is gathered and everything that's going to be needed.
That's right.
And then it goes to the selection committee, and I'm sorry we don't have anybody here from selection, but Amber, you're going to tell us. Now they go to the selection committee, and then what happens there?
Well, just to sort of clarify too, we have a variety of selection committees because of all of the award categories.
Of course.
So we've got our volunteer-focused selection committee, which covers the Man and Woman of the Year, our Young Male, Young Female Volunteer of the Year, our Corporate Community of the Year categories, as well as the Volunteer Organization of the Year. So those are judged based on kind of volunteer contributions in the city that have impacted Kelowna residents. Then we have our sports awards that have a sports selection committee. So these are the Male and Female Athlete of the Year nominations, the Athletic Team of the Year nominations, as well as the Coach of the Year nominations. So, and then we have the Arts Awards. So we have our Honor in the Arts and our Teen Honor in the Arts.
Right.
Which that committee is overseen by the Arts Council of the Central Okanagan, along with members of the community to help with the arts selection. And then lastly, we have our Champion for the Environment Awards for an individual and for a business. So again, representation within that sector through the regional district, as well as kind of other sort of areas within environmentalism.
And that's a fairly new award, isn't it? Over the last maybe 4 or 5 years?
Yep.
5 years?
Yeah. It came through the Mayor's Environmental Awards, and it was taken into sort of the 2 main Champion for the Environment Awards for an individual and for a business.
Great.
To be represented at the Civic and Community Awards, which it wasn't a part of before.
So. That's great.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful. It's not just, I've had a lot of people say to me when I've met them on the street and have talked about the Civic Awards, oh, I didn't know they were happening, or, oh, I didn't know how do you nominate somebody, or how does this happen? So I really think that there's still a lot of people in Kelowna and area that aren't familiar with our awards. And what happens after, well, we'll talk in a minute about the actual evening, but I know down in Stewart Park there are some nice stands that have these plaques on them. What, those are the names of the award and the recipient, is that right?
Yes,
that are down in.
So after the kind of a recipient has been announced at the awards night, their name is represented on these plaques down at Stewart Park for the whole year. So they'll be there on those benches for the full year, and then at the end of this year's awards program in April, those plaques will be changed out with the current recipients, or recognizing for 2017.
Yeah.
Again,
so what
for the
happens
year.
to those plaques?
We contact the the recipient and see if they would like to keep them. And as an, I mean, they come away from the awards program with, you know, a recognition plaque from the city and
Yes,
gifts from that. But it's another thing that has their name on it with the category.
Yeah.
So many of the recipients like to be able to collect that as well.
One of the things that's really nice about those ones now over the last couple of years is that they're plastic, or they're not a stainless steel the way they were
The first
in
design,
2013.
The first design was a heavy steel plate that went
Yes.
up there, and that was a hard thing to hand back to the people that
I
you know were on
I
them.
still have mine.
You got yours?
I still have mine.
I think
it's
yeah.
not. I can't just have it sort of hanging somewhere because
No.
it's really quite heavy. But I still do have it.
So it's been redesigned in the last 3 years, and it is a strong, sturdy, probably more damage-proof than the steel. Actually, it's a really strong plastic that's engraved and looks just
And they
the
look
same.
really
They look
nice.
beautiful
Yeah.
up there, and it's a much easier item to be able to hand back to the recipients at the end of the year. So.
Now the actual event, the presentation of all the three finalists, is that right, in each category?
Yeah.
Okay.
Up to
three
finalists.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the night of, they're presented at the community theater. However, that event has certainly changed and evolved over the last 43 years. Yes, I can remember when they were held at the Parkinson Rec Center, and it was actually broadcast. The last two awards, the Sarah Donalda Treadgold Woman of the Year and the Fred Macklin Man of the Year, were broadcast over one of the radio stations.
Really?
Yes, and it was really quite interesting because, of course, it wasn't televised, it was just on radio. And so there was somebody from the radio station holding up a sign that said applaud, so that when the winner was announced, you'd get this sign that said applause, so everybody would clap and it would go over the air. And then from Parkinson, I think it moved to the Capri. It was there. That was the first time they had sort of like a formal dinner. Yeah, and that was for a number of years. And then it went to the Grand.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I remember that it was decided amongst the steering committee, I guess, that we needed to sort of step up the program a little bit and honor the nominees in a different way. So what happens to those? There's a reception now. So tell me about the reception for the people who are the finalists.
Well, there was always a reception, but it was often held the same evening as the awards night, just right before. But it was a closed function, so the finalist would go in along with the sponsors and city council, separate from their family. We decided that could be, they could be honored a little bit better by providing that as a separate function. Then it didn't feel so rushed. So now we do a mayor's reception a week and a half before the awards night. It's a Sunday afternoon reception. You know, it's open to the finalists as well as their nominator and a family member, with the sponsors and city council. So it's a private function. It's not something that the public. It's not open to the public to drop in unless they're invited by the nominee. But it's just a special opportunity for mayor and council to really recognize each of the finalists in each of the categories before the awards night, where it's a bit more of a gala event with a big production video display with their photos and stuff, and then we announce the recipients. So it just kind of provides two opportunities to recognize those finalists now in a very special way.
Yeah, I always thought that once that came into being, that it was really a great way to honor the finalists in a very special way that was their night. Or their afternoon. It wasn't sort of bundled into the night of the Civic Awards, so that you could actually meet them and talk to them and congratulate them in a different way than on
in a more relaxed environment.
Exactly.
And this year, the mayor's reception is during National Volunteer Week.
Really?
So it'll have an opportunity for the mayor to actually proclaim National Volunteer Week. And this year the theme is about celebrating the value of volunteers. And that's one of my passions, in being involved with volunteers and working with managers who work with volunteers and other organizations. Hence my role on the nominating committee in the first place. And so I'm really quite thrilled that this year we're able to have at least the mayor's reception during the National Volunteer Week.
That's great. That is wonderful. And so then we get to the actual night of the Civic Awards, and that is April 26th.
Yep.
And it starts with a reception in the lobby area of the community theater.
Yeah, we have a social hour for the hour that people arrive. So doors open at 6.
At 6.
And then the actual award show will start at 7 in the theater. But there will be lots of food, and we encourage people to come before 7, obviously, and have a little bite to eat and mingle. And it's an opportunity to kind of, again, meet with the finalists. This is now kind of the bigger event. So it's not the closed function that the mayor's reception is. So everybody can kind of come read about, we have profiles on display of each of the finalists.
That's just what I was going to say. That's the part I like.
Yes,
the
Wall of Fame.
The Wall of Fame. It is just incredible to go and to see the pictures of the people and just
read about why they were nominated. Selected. Yeah.
I mean, I think that we live in a community that is so incredibly blessed with volunteers and the caliber of volunteers, and these people that we recognize on the 26th of April, even the finalists. When you listen to what they have accomplished in the previous year to bring recognition to Kelowna, I'm actually blown away by the young people in the schools in our area that do so much, not only keeping up their grade point average, but also the other volunteering that they do, not only in their schools, but in the community. It's really incredible.
It's my favorite category of them.
Is it? Well, it's so inspiring.
It is.
To think that here are young people who are already that committed to our community to give of their time, their interests, their talent. At the same time, of course, they're gaining skills and experience and networking in the community, which is really valuable for them. But they're so young in their volunteer life,
I
right?
know.
Yeah.
And so to think of them, continuing to mature and through the different stages of their own life cycle, having different kinds of opportunities to volunteer throughout the community, it just bodes very well for a very strong future of volunteerism led by these individuals.
Yes. They are the future of this area of Kelowna and surrounding area in the volunteer sector. They have to replace people like me. I'm getting to the end of that long career of volunteering in the community. So it's really important to see the young people coming forward. It's an incredible evening. How can people get tickets?
Well,
they're not out yet, I know. But
they're not. Tickets will go on sale March 5th. I should say that we are public with the finalists at City Council on Monday, March 5th. And at that same time, tickets will go on sale through Kelowna Tickets. You can go also to the City of Kelowna website, kelowna.ca/our-community, for the Civic and Community Awards. Our homepage will have the full list of who's been selected as finalists in each category, as well as how to get tickets.
And I'm so excited that Volunteer Week starts at the mayor's reception. That's really exciting this year to be able to have that. Any other comments or anything you'd like to mention about the Civic Awards? I mean, I'm incredibly impressed that you do all the work, really.
I'm surrounded by teams of volunteers
I know
with our
you are.
committees.
A lot of behind the scenes.
A lot of people
I
that
know
are
you
helping.
are.
Yep.
However, it all gets done by making sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted, and I know it's a daunting task, and I know from past experience with you, Amber, that you get kind of nervous toward the end to make sure that everything is all in order, and making sure all the little video clips are done for all the. That's another piece of the work that you do, is making sure that all those video clips and all the information about all the nominees is done. And
so they can be highlighted during the awards night.
During the awards night.
I think that's part of the fun part, is collecting the photos, and we feed everything to our videographer that puts together the full show with the bio voiced, and so it's quite a show. When you come to the awards night, each category has 3 finalists, and the finalists are represented through this big video profile, and that's not the part that stresses me out as much as getting through the nomination period and making sure that people. There's so many deserving people in our community.
I know.
And again, we're all busy in our bubbles, I call it. So just with the help of the nominating committee, helping to promote the nomination period out in the community, so that we're getting the nominations in, and then and then everything else just falls into place once we've got those nominations. And sometimes it's very, very hard decisions have to be made at the selection table to decide who's going to be the top 3 finalists.
Yep.
And then even harder, who's the recipient?
Who's the recipient? That's right.
But it always comes together, and it's a really fabulous night.
And you also, Dawn, I believe you have to work with the school district as well to get those young people's nominations from the schools.
When you were talking earlier about a lot of people not knowing, a lot of what we do is very targeted towards areas in our community that are most likely to be able to bring in the kinds of nominations in the various categories. So the high schools are very specifically contacted through the principals, the vice principals, and especially the counselors, who tend to end up being the ones that do the nomination. And then, of course, for the business awards, we'd work through the Chamber of Commerce, and that kind of thing. Through KCR, Community Resources, I've got a lot of contact with the not-for-profits and the charities, and so I'm able to get the word out very specifically. And again, when people are really in touch with groups of people for potential nominations for specific awards, they're usually more aware of deserving people right off the bat, or organizations. And so when we first meet for the nomination committee and we start brainstorming in each of the categories, so that we can then start to continue to approach, it is quite encouraging, because people all year round are watching for people, organizations, businesses that this year they did a particularly interesting contribution, and so this would be a stronger year for them to be nominated. And then, quite frankly, it takes selfless people to nominate.
That's right.
It's not a fun process to nominate.
No, it's not.
I mean, you really pull for that person or that organization, and Amber's done a great job of laying out specific questions with a limited number of words and that sort of thing, to try and sort of level the playing field, if you like, for making the nominations. But it takes selfless people who are willing to notice other people or groups who've done wonderful things in our community, and then put that down on paper, so that then the selection committee has something to choose amongst. And that's one of the roles that Amber and the steering committee that we look at too. As the nominations start coming in, we review them to see if they're evenly balanced in submission content. And so if a nomination is a little bit weaker, or they have an opportunity still for a nomination letter or a letter of support, then there's an opportunity still to do that. We reach back out to them, because we really want the nominations to be just as strong as possible. And then when you're talking about the clips that are spoken and shown the night of the event, I always try and guess in each of the categories because I'm not on the selection committee, right? So I'm listening and watching and trying to think, okay, if I was in the selection committee, which one of these three, and it's only three.
Yes.
I mean, they may have gotten in 8, 10 or more
That's
nominations in
right,
category,
yes.
but now it's down to 3, and I still don't often pick the right one.
Our writer,
It's tough.
But
We
it's
have
fun
a-
to sit there,
It's
and I mean,
tough.
I've been in the
Yes,
same
yeah.
position as you, having known some of the names of the nominations, and then think, oh, now who would I choose out of these 3?
I was going to
Yeah.
say, we have our writer that writes the bios. She does an amazing job. She doesn't know who the winner is of the 3 finalists, and she writes them all very, very equally.
Very
She-
even, right?
She takes these nomination packages and pulls it into a 1-minute voiced blurb. And make sure they're all very balanced as far as the information that's brought forward. So you are left there in the audience not really knowing who's going to be selected.
That's right. And after you sit there and listen
I know.
and look at what their accomplishments have been.
I like to think too that once you've been kind of recognized as one of these finalists, you're all presented, you're all celebrated at the same level.
Exactly.
And then it's a bonus if you're announced as the recipient, but it's really celebrating each and every finalist that's there that evening
Yeah.
for
And
what
I
they've
know
done.
some of the organizations and businesses will identify on their websites, their business cards, that they've been nominated.
Past finalists.
Yes,
or-
and
yeah.
whether they have been a finalist, and of course whether or not they've won. And so I think we need to remember that a nomination coming in is an honor.
Oh,
Somebody's
great. Oh, yes.
noticed you or your business or your organization.
Yes.
They've taken the time to work with you to
Yep.
pull together that information in the best possible way to make that nomination shine, and then to have that go to a committee who then has to stew and pick, and really it's tough. It's really tough. So having a nomination, being a finalist, and of course winning, all of those stages are amazing opportunities for our community really to get behind people and organizations and bring them forward for a nomination.
And I think the message too to some of the nominators that maybe don't get a successful nomination go through, they put the time in to recognize, say, an organization or a business, and that hasn't been selected as a finalist, to not be discouraged,
No,
to
that's
renominate,
right, to nominate them next
keep
year.
nominating, because we are blessed and live in a community that we have some amazing people and organizations, but I don't ever want a nominator to be like, oh, I'm not going to nominate because I've nominated before and they haven't been picked.
haven't been picked.
Or,
Yeah, it's a little discouraging
It can
sometimes.
be discouraging.
Yep,
That's
yep.
I think that's the part I don't like, is sort of following up with the unsuccessful nominees
I
and
know,
nominators.
I know.
Because they're all deserving if
Everybody
they've been
is.
selected
Yeah,
as
everybody's deserving.
to be nominated.
Yeah.
So don't get discouraged.
I
Keep
know.
submitting those nominations.
That's right. And we have to keep going and keep encouraging people
Yeah.
to do that all the time. So, yeah. And I think that this community in particular is really blessed. And I know, Dawn, one of your jobs at KCR is to keep track of the number of volunteer hours that this community has done. And I know that we're, from having been involved a little bit beforehand, I know that this community is really up there in the province with the number of volunteer hours and the number of volunteers that we have in this community.
It's interesting you should mention that, because 2017,
Oh, yes.
being our special celebration nationwide, there was a campaign called the Canada 150 for 150 volunteer hours. And so people were encouraged to volunteer 150 hours, which is the little bit less than the national average and a little bit more than our BC average. And so the City of Kelowna put out a challenge, and KCR, we worked with the city and with Do Some Good, which was the national platform. And on the national platform, there were about 300,000 hours registered. We have, as part of our work, we've actually been phoning volunteer managers in organizations, because that's who really keeps track, organization by organization. We have about 15% response rate so far, but we're going to try and push harder. And we're up over 600,000 hours for just 14% of the hours volunteered here. It's a little bit more than Kelowna, it's the Central Okanagan.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, 600,000 hours from 14% of our not-for-profits. And in terms of the national challenge, using the national platform alone, Kelowna was third in all of Canada.
Whoa, really?
You must admit, though, Volunteer Ottawa was #1. Are we
Oh, well.
surprised? No, and so they should be. But when you think about Kelowna and the
Our
size of our
population, yeah.
community compared to others, I'm astounded. And there again, you know, the tie back in to an opportunity with the Civic Awards to honor
those
key people
yeah.
who represent us, who, you know, we volunteer, but maybe not quite to that caliber, that amount, but we can all be proud of one another, because it's really the volunteers that make our community hum in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that quite often we say to people that if you, particularly businesses, and if you had to pay a volunteer at the going rate, it's amazing how much volunteers are worth. There's just absolutely incredible. I did my 150 hours in May last year.
Good for you. Last month, actually, I did a workshop on how to, because the theme for National Volunteer Week is celebrating value of volunteers. Last month, I did a workshop with managers of volunteers talking about how to convert hours to show the economic value. And there are different kinds of calculations that can be used.
Yeah.
And then this month, we're looking at the impact value, the impact to the volunteer, the impact to the volunteer's family, impact to organizations, the clients that individual organizations serve, and ultimately to the community. So I'm just so excited to be able to present some of the results of our research on those kinds of things.
And that ties right back into the Civic Awards,
Yes.
in that, you know, all these volunteers out there, these people who are doing such excellent work in our community, who need to be recognized. And even if they're a finalist, or even if they don't get that far in the process, as you said earlier, it is a great honor to be nominated and to have somebody recognize the work that you do in our community. It's really great. I want to thank you, Amber, and I want to thank you, Dawn, for being here.
You're welcome.
And telling us a little bit more about the Civic Awards. And to remind people that be on the lookout for the names of the finalists, and also where to get tickets. And everybody come out and enjoy the Civic Awards on April 26th. It's going to be a wonderful evening.
You will be blessed.
You will.
Amazingly.
Thank you so much for highlighting us today.
Hey, that's just great. I have a very soft spot in my heart for the Civic Awards, as you all know. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for watching. This has been Where You Live.